Hi, welcome to episode 1 of Judging the Journal. If you followed us from the main channel, the 6++ 40k channel, you might have seen Cracking the Codex, where each week we break down one of the detachments and what units are good in it, what you might like to take, and an army list at the end. This is the equivalent for Old World. We're going to be talking every couple of weeks, maybe once a month, something along those lines, breaking down one of the journals, the Armies of Infamy, Armies of Renown, whatever they're called.
Armies of Infamy, sir.
Yeah, they're all great names, so whatever you want to call it, we won't stop you. This week, we are going to be talking about Nomadic Waaagh, which I think is, in my opinion, the most fun of all of the Armies of Infamy that we've seen so far, because it's all mounted. It's all mounted, it's all fun. How are you feeling about this one, Lewis?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this one, Ed. I think we picked a really good, strong one to start. So hopefully, if you enjoy this, then we're all good, and we can plough into the other ones as well. I'm quite interested in talking about one of the undead ones at some point. So, but this definitely a good laugh. This one.
Yeah, helps that I've been playing Orcs, so having actual practice is a good place to start.
Indeed.
So, moving on, Nomadic Waaagh. What is it you get if you're an Orcs and Goblins player? Well, there are a few not quite army-wide rules, but fairly army-wide. First of all, you've got Choppers. Now, Choppers is on every Orc model. It's not on the Goblins, but on a turn it charged, model with this special rule can reroll their wounds of 1 and improves the AP of their weapons by 1. Melee only, but that's fairly incredible. If you had, say, a load of great weapon attacks that are strength 6 and probably going to be wounding on 2s, you're going to be re-rolling 1s, and then you've got AP 3, which is pretty spicy.
There's just not many sources of re-rolls in the game, is there? So
there really isn't.
Any way you can get it is, as you say, especially on stuff that's winning on 2s against most things anyway. It's just 100% wound rate.
Yeah, it's really solid. And also most armies that have this sort of, extra AP if using X weapon, it's mostly just hand weapons. In this case, it's any non-magical weapon, which is incredible. Really good.
Yep, spot on.
Doesn't apply to the boars, but don't worry, boars have their own rule, which is Tusker Charge. On a turn they charge, they get an extra AP.
Wait!
That was a good one. They also get +1 strength, which is really nice, because Warboars are strength 3 natively. But that's fine. Just charge and kill stuff, and then you can charge and kill stuff again. So you just, in theory, you're always getting this buff. I'm pretty sure.
Through stuff.
Yeah, if your opponent makes no tactical decisions, your army is so good. That's what I'm saying.
That will be a theme, I think, for this detachment.
Yeah, although this, to be fair, I think this is one that makes it hard for your opponents to make tactical decisions, because you can put your foot in their throat very early.
Yeah, turn 1, you're in.
Absolutely, yeah. So I don't know if I said they also get +1 strength on the turn they charge, which is great stuff. Also, Biggins. Now, Biggins isn't necessarily a rule that all your models are going to have, but you're going to have at least one unit of Biggins in the Boar Boys. They get +1 strength and Armor Bane 1. This means that instead of having, strength 3 boys that become strength 4 with cavalry spears on the charge, which is fine, you're getting up to that strength 5, which is the sort of lance equivalent. And that AP 1 you've got from your cavalry spears becomes AP 2 because of Choppers. So effectively, that unit of Boar Boys are knights. They're pretty solid,
Yeah, 100%.
Toughness 4. They've got a 3-up armor save from a combination of the heavy armor shield and the armored hide of the boar. And, strength 5, AP 2, also reroll 1s, which is better than most knights can manage. Really solid unit. But we'll talk more about that as we get through. So, enough about the army-wide stuff. What do you get if you are a Nomadic Waaagh player specifically, Lewis?
So you get what could only be described as a plethora of special rules. Really That's a word I like using, Ed. Plethora doesn't come up very often. Smorgasbord of special rules. Clearly all cavalry focused, which as they should be. So the first one is called Cunning Hunters, which you just obviously don't want to swap the C and the H around there. We just keep it as Cunning Hunters. It allows your it allows your Wolf Riders and your Boar Boys to gain ambushes for
just the Wolf.
Just the Wolf Riders. Sorry, just the Wolf Riders get ambushes for 1 point per model, and you can obviously give it to the bosses of the shamans that are on giant wolves as well. What do you think of this one, then, Ed?
It's great. I think it's 10 points if you want to put it on a character, 1 point if you want to put it on a normal model. That's cheap. Ambushes, I'm kind of on the fence about. I think it's really nice to have as an option. There is a character, which we don't particularly talk about. He can go in any of the armies, but Kilnick is pretty solid. Just a good data sheet, but also he gives your ambushing units +1 to come in. So you bringing those units in on a 3-up instead of a 4-up, which adds a little bit of reliability.
Much more reliable, yeah.
Yeah,
I think what you need. I think you need to use him if you're going to make advantage of this. I think you really got to use him on that.
Yeah, I like having stuff in reserve to threaten my opponents. It's something that I've enjoyed doing in 40k, and it's a lot more limited in Old World, but I think a lot more powerful. So I haven't played around with it yet, but I definitely will be in the future.
Yeah.
I just need to, I've got plenty of Bull Boys and I've got some Chariots. I just need to get some Wolf Riders to really get the reps in.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's one of those rules as well that obviously it's a random chance for them to appear, but I don't think your opponent can afford not to think about it.
100%.
So it's one of these things that it may not ever actually be that impactful in terms of the amount of damage they do when they turn up or when they actually show up. But the fact that it will probably make your opponent think twice about how they're moving their models, where they're positioning things, you're introducing decisions into your opponent's game plan, which they otherwise wouldn't have to make. I think every time you do that, you risk them making a mistake and giving the rest of the stuff that's on the board the opportunity to exploit it.
Yep, absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself. So speaking of, you said not doing damage. What about things that do damage? What if you wanted to hit them fast and also hard?
You would like to hit them fast and hit them hard, Ed? Both at the same time. That's quite greedy of you. But luckily, the Nomadic Waaagh does account for this. So it has a blanket rule. So any orcs that are riding boars, they get impact hits 1 and at -1 AP on the charge. So straight in with some initiative 10 damage, which is really good. I think any of those kind of faster armies you're up against that might be able to get some hits off against you before we get started, you can get in there with your initiative 10. Brilliant.
Better than initiative 10. This is impact
initiative 10, is it not?
I believe it's before initiative 10. It hasn't come up in any of my games yet, but I think it goes before.
I'm relatively confident it's initiative 10 because it came up against the ogres, because the ogres.
No worries. It's really good. Is the point? It's I think the best form of damage. It's auto hitting. It's typically got paired with AP, and it has also got it's things that you might struggle with, like pesky elves. If you want to charge a unit of swordmasters, impact hits, cool. Wiped half the front rank already. They're going to hit me back, kill a couple of models, then I can just wipe them with the rest of my charge. Yeah, really 100%. Strong.
But what it also allows you to do is you can give your Boar Boy mobs Vanguard for 1 point per model. Now, I think in a 2,000 point army, you can do this to 2 different units.
I like how you say only. I would describe it as you can have 2 units of Vanguard and Boar Boys, which is nuts.
Yes, because the whole army would be broken, Ed. Come on.
Well, I mean, I think that when I've been writing and playing around with lists, I've been running 2 units of Boar Boys.
Yes.
And they both have Vanguard. They're just very, very good.
No, 100%. No, definitely.
All right. What else we got?
So next up is hunting packs. This one, I would be really interested to get your thoughts on this, Ed, because I'm looking at it and I'm wondering where the value comes in, because the units. So this basically allows Wolf Riders to swap their open order or skirmish formations for close order and horde.
Yes.
So they can get extra rank bonuses, which is nice, and close order is the extra combat res. But ultimately, you're just kind of putting it on Wolf Riders.
So this is a replacement for your units of foot slogging infantry.
Yeah,
you can run just like a brick of 14 wolves and a character, or maybe even up to 20 wolves, which might be a little bit excessive. But you can just run them and have a unit that relies a little more on static combat res, does a little bit more of the rank and flank while still being incredibly mobile. They're fast. Sure, they don't have open order, but they can move. Was it 8 or 9 inches? I think it's 9 inches on giant wolves. So you can get around the board and you can present a decent chunk of static combat res, close order, banner. You could go a couple of ranks if you want to go for the points for it. Try and get that flank charge with the close order. You could be looking at sort of like a solid +5 combat res to really just win over the fight with your slower units like your chariots, which are the heavy hitters.
Yeah. Definitely, I think that's one to play around with that. I'll be see how it works out. Next up is called On Da Move. Fantasy Orcs and Goblins have not yet learned how to spell the yet. And this one's really easy. All characters must be mounted. So no foot slogging war bosses or anything like that when everything else runs off ahead of them. Not that any self-respecting war boss in that situation would be doing anything other than being right at the front. But
of course.
Can't do it.
Yeah. So nice and simple. All your characters have to be mounted. Your entire army has to be mounted, with a couple of exceptions. You can take giants, you can take mercenaries as well. Obviously, you can take the Badland Ogre Bulls, which are 6-inch move ogres. They're fine. But almost every model in your army is going to be mounted, and a lot of them is going to have swift stride, so you're going to be getting places.
Yeah. And then penultimately, solitary fighters. Now, this is the one which potentially might take the Nomadic Waaagh from being a genuinely competitive choice to potentially being more on the fun side, because it means all your Black Orc bosses lose Quell Impetuosity. So you're going to be dealing with impetuousness throughout.
Yes, but is what I'd say. So you remain. Your Black Orc units don't have to take impetuosity tests, because they don't have impetuosity on the datasheet. So Black Orc Chariots, Black Orc characters, they don't have to take impetuosity tests. There's also an item called, I believe, the Big Boss's Thinking Hat, or something along those lines.
Okay.
25 points, gives you +1 initiative, but it also means that your unit doesn't have to suffer impetuosity. So you can sprinkle probably about 40 to 50% of your army as not being impetuous, which is quite nice.
Okay.
And you can kind of control where it goes. Then you can also just go, the rest of my army is so fast that I'm going to be hitting you turn 1.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care about testing for impetuosity. I want to charge you before you
get in straight away.
Absolutely, yeah. I think this is. It looks like. I think it's less of a downside than it looks like. There is absolutely counterplay to it. You can sort of semi-frenzy bait, but then on the flip side, I've been taking frenzied Savage Orc Boar Boys because, if I've got a 50% chance of charging anyway, why not just get the extra attack?
Yeah, go for it.
It's pretty good.
No, 100%. No, I think, again, it's one of these ones that you want to play around with it to see how much of an impact it has. I think even though you have all of that speed from everything being mounted and everything moving so fast, I think as much as we like just to run everything into combat immediately, I'm not entirely sure that is going to be the best way of dealing with stuff. I think that can be countered, and actually not having control over that, even if it is only for 50% of your army.
Yeah.
I think a good player, if you're playing a top player, they will mess you up, and then you'll end up with boys in the way of each other. Your Black Orcs get blocked off by their own units. That stuff will be running all over the place. And I think, from my Vampire Council perspective, I immediately look at a couple of units of risen zombies to make you run across your own army and then get in the way of everything and allow me to get flank charges off, even though you're much faster than me. So I can see ways of playing against it just from reading that. So I will be interested again once you've
absolutely
you give it a go, see how you play around it.
I've played a couple of games with the detachment, had a lot of fun with it. What I'd say is, if you go first, I don't think there's really much counterplay to it. If your opponent goes first, there is that room for it. Obviously, you can deploy more safely and set up bait units, and Vanguard moves are quite nice as well. But it is a downside, but I'm not overly concerned about it.
Yeah. Would you put your units that don't suffer impetuosity, would you include them in the Vanguard squads, or would you put those characters?
No, Vanguard squads are things that I want to be charging.
You just literally send those Vanguard units out and accept that they're just going to charge the first thing they see.
Yeah, not necessarily. They're going to charge something with a Vanguard move and your Swift Stride, and potentially the I've forgotten the name of it. The Law of Waaagh spell.
Yeah,
gives you +3 inches to your move, +3 inch D3 on the charge. You can charge a number of units turn 1 potentially.
Yeah.
However, and the last thing here, not a USR unlocks Black Orc Chariots. We will talk about those more, but I think Black Orc Chariots are a reason.
Section on those.
They're a reason on their own to play this detachment. They are so good. I would love to be running 5 or 6 of them, and you absolutely can do that. So let's move on to what we've got here. The list building restrictions. So something I like about the Armies of Infamy is that they do actually have restrictions. You're not just, I'm playing my Fanatic bricks and my Black Orc bricks, but also I've got extra cool rules. You're saying, I'm not having any of that. Instead, I'm playing something different. Yeah. So what are the restrictions for list building here?
Yeah, so I agree, actually, Ed, thinking about it. Just the way it just kind of forces you to focus on that particular style. Just mean, as you say, you can't just put things that are generally good into the list and then generate buffs. I think it's just really, really good. But yeah, for this, so obviously you can only take your mounted units. As you mentioned before, Ed, we can take giants and the list of mercenaries. So you could kind of play around that. with some other stuff, but I do quite like the buffs that the mounted stuff gets. So I'd probably consider a giant, but I don't know whether to consider ogres as well. You can take 0 to 1 Black Orc character for every Black Orc chariot that you've got, and there is no cap on that. So you can do that multiple times.
Yeah, and just interesting to note, different to the normal restrictions, you have to have 1 Black Orc character and a Black Orc unit. Each one's limited by each other. In this detachment, the Black Orc chariots are not limited, so you can just run as many. A lot of people are playing Rule of 3 tournaments, especially, so you could run 3 Black Orc chariots and only 1 Black Orc character, and that's absolutely fine in the list building.
No, good. And obviously, you can't take any Night Goblins, so critically for Orcs and Goblins players, that means you are not taking any Fanatics.
No, that's
true.
You're
going to have to use your instant win buttons and leave them at home.
Someone's salty. What do we got in the core?
So again, this is something we touched on before, but the fact they actually change what's core and what isn't core for these Armies of Infamy is great, because it gives Games Workshop so much freedom to play around with what these armies look like on the tabletop, by saying, actually, in the main book this stuff's core, but in this army these things are core. So here with the Nomadic Horde, we've got Goblin Wolf Riders and Wolf Chariots as core, and then you can either take a Black Orc Chariot or a Boar Boy Mob, depending on who you've chosen as your general.
So that's if you've got a Black Orc boss as your general, it's a Black Orc Chariot, or if you've got a War Boss, it's a Boar Boy Mob. And this is an interesting dynamic, because Black Orc characters are objectively better.
Mm-hmm.
I would always rather have a Black Orc character than a normal general, However, I would rather spend more points in my core on Boar Boys, because I want to take them anyway, and I can take less of the less good Wolf Riders and Wolf Chariots, which are good and they do have their place, but I'd rather spend more points on the stuff that I want to take the big heavy hitters in this list. So it's an interesting change in dynamic.
Yeah, so if you were to take a chariot, for example, you could then just take minimum units of Wolf Riders until you get to your 25% of your army. But then, as you say, with the Boar Boy Mob, you could probably sink a bigger unit of Boar Boys in and just take fewer Wolf Riders. So that's minimum. I mean, have you thought about the Wolf Chariots at all?
Minimum units of Wolf Chariots are something I'm very hot on, and we'll talk about that more, because they're in the list. We'll get to that at the end, but so a bit of a restriction on core. How about the 2.5 units in special? What have we got there?
2.5 units. Orc Boar Boys, Boar Chariots, and the Snotling Pump Wagons, which is just the worst named unit in the world. But
no, it's great. I love it. Genuinely do. So we're not going to talk about the Snotling Pump Wagons. I don't think they're particularly good. I think they're fun, and if you like them, you should run them, because they're hilarious. 100%. But I don't think there's a huge value in talking about them in terms of what's good. If you like them, you'll run them and you'll have a good time. So Boar Boys, incredible unit.
100%. Yeah.
You can tool them up in so many different ways, and we are going to go over a couple of those, so I won't go into them too much. But I think you can have 3 very good units. Points depending, and there are lots of different ways to run them. You can run them as sort of like a 7 or 8 wide, just a single unit that blasts through. You can run them as a sort of 5x2, almost more like a big unit of knights that just wants to kill stuff, because they've got a lot of attacks between them. They've got Furious Charge, so each one's got 2 attacks plus the boar, which, as far as cavalry goes, that's a lot of output.
Pretty good, yeah.
And if you do that, you're probably still getting, a 2nd or 3rd charge out of them, which is really valuable. And then Boar Chariots. Boar Chariots are fine. They pale in comparison to the Black Orc Chariots. However, you can only fit 3 Black Orc Chariots into your rare slot. So, maybe you look at the Boar Chariots. They're fine. I quite like them with a 3rd crew member and Frenzy, because then you just go, hey, I was going to charge you anyway, and here's 6 attacks plus 2 from the boars, and then some impact hits, and it's a load of nonsense. It's enough nonsense to get stuff done.
Yeah, and the Army of Infamy here gives you an option for a all chariot army if you wanted to do that. So you've got enough chariots there in core, where you chuck the Black Orc one in core, then fill up with chariot mounted characters, chuck some board chariots in for your special, and then fill up rest for the rare slots for your Black Orc chariots again. So if that's the route you want it to go down, then I'm sure there's something that would work in there.
Yes, there is a full chariot list that I wrote in collaboration with someone at the last event I was at. However, I haven't tested it, so I haven't got it on screen to
Don't know
talk
whether it's
about.
any good or not.
Well, yeah, maybe once I've got a couple of games in, I'll do a list deck on it, because it's an incredibly fun list. Spoiler, it's just chariots. That's it. And, you can do a surprising amount with that. Goblin Wolf Chariots. You can take big units of Goblin Wolf Chariots. They've got Swift Stride, They go fast. They are pretty solid. And then rare, just to wrap up, Black Orc Chariots, which are incredible, and Giants. Giants are fine. I think you're perfectly within your right to take them. But Black Orc Chariots, on the other hand, they're
here
so
we go.
good.
Control yourself, Ed. Calm down. Remain calm.
134 points. You're taking just the normal chariot with the great weapons on the 2 Black Orcs on the back of there. They've got Furious Charge. They're a heavy chariot. So you charge in. You've got D6 plus 1 impact hits, strength 5 with AP 2, because it's a heavy chariot. And then you've got 4 attacks with great weapons. So, strength 6, AP 3, rerolling once to wound on the charge. That's good. That's like a solid little package.
That on its own is going to do the damage output of significantly larger and more expensive units.
You can spend 10 points to give the unit a standard. This is fine. I don't think I'd bother on the normal ones, not on the standard, because you're giving up 50 more victory points if your opponent manages to kill them.
That's
and
I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, they are tanky, but they're not that tanky. T5, 4 wounds, 3 up save. That's gonna, it's not bothered about poison arrows. It is kind of bothered by chariot cannons or stone throwers. Those are the sorts of things that can pick them up quite quickly. So yeah, they're fine. Where they get really good is when you put a character on top of them. Mm-hmm. So the loadout that I've been playing around with the most is a Black Orc boss, who's the battle standard bearer, sits on the top. So that takes the attacks from 4 to 8, because you've got, the boss with 3 attacks with Furious Charge as well. BSB, so you've got 1 static combat res there. You give them with the War Banner, only 25 points, and that takes you up to 2 static combat res. Your Close Order for 3. You spend 10 points for the standard on the model. That takes you to 4. And then you also have the special rule Waaagh. Once per game in your command phase, you take a leadership test. If you pass it, you get +1 CR, and you also get to reroll 1s to hit. Just a good buff overall. But that takes you up to a 5th point of static combat res.
Before you rolled any of those attacks.
Before you roll your impact hits. So this is really good, because where chariots or characters on mounts typically suffer is they will go in, they'll be challenged out by a champion, they will draw or win the combat by a little bit. The enemy unit will give ground or fall back in good order, and you'll just be like, cool, glad I did this. In this case, you are almost certain to smash a unit in terms of, you're almost guaranteed a fall back in good order. You've got a static 4 to 5 combat res. You're probably, if you're challenged by a unit champion, you're almost guaranteed to get the full overkill. They're going to be taking a test at, -9, -10, something stupid like that. And you just go, well, less because of their static combat res, but still, -6 or 7. Most units, that's a double 1. Great. Really, really good.
Yeah.
They probably fall back in good order. You decide to follow up. You get the impact hits again. This time they haven't got a champion. Yes, they can charge you because it's their turn, but it's really solid. Also, it's a chariot, so it's immune to Monster Slayer and Killing Blow. There is no chariot Killing Blow, which is a rule.
That's interesting. I would assume Killing Blow would have worked on them.
Specifically infantry and cavalry. And then Monster Slayer is specifically monsters and behemoths. So, very nice, yeah.
Is that Chariots fight, do you think, or is that deliberate?
Well, they don't really fit into either. And I think it's fine, because chariots are pretty bound to, if you've got a heavy chariot, which is what your combat monster character wants to be on, you're going to be moving somewhere between 6 and 8 inches. You won't have Swift Stride. That's fine. You've got lumbering. You've got a little bit of maneuverability. They get around, but they're not super fast. It's not a dragon. You're not just going around and stomping. I don't think it's a problem, but I think it is very good, and it's definitely a bonus for taking it. So now that we've sort of now that I've gushed about the Black Orcs, let's have a little look here. We've got some magic items of note, and these are ones that we thought were particularly good for the Army of Infamy. Slightly different to a lot of the Armies of Infamy. I don't believe there are any that are locked to Nomadic Waaagh, but there are extra magic items in the Arcane Journal.
Yeah.
And some of those are in here, and some of these are just ones that I think are really good from the main rulebook. So let's swap our first one. What do we got?
Yeah, so it was interesting actually that they don't have Nomadic Waaagh specific ones. Obviously, you say they're in the book, but it feels like, does it feel like a missed opportunity maybe to just do unique
I'm
ones,
fine with it
or you're happy
because
with it?
you get so few in the main index
Yeah.
compared to previous editions of the game. I don't feel like we're oversaturated.
Okay.
And I think that as long as they write good ones, the armies that I've been writing have been taking from both the journal and also from the index, which I think is a really nice middle ground.
Yeah, definitely. As you say, you'd rather have fewer but good ones rather than like loads of ones that you're just never ever going to use. So I guess that makes sense. But the first one is just hit them harder, basically, with Da Choppiest Chopper. Strength +1, AP -3. They will learn how to say the at some point in the future.
No. Yeah, it's great. It's a little spenny for what you get. It's 35 points, so it's hard to combine it with defensive items.
Oh, that is quite expensive, isn't it? Yeah, I hadn't noticed
it's if you're looking to get that 2-up save by combining, plate armor, shield, whatever else, troll hide trousers, cough cough. We'll get to those in a second. It's the best weapon you can take as a one-handed weapon, in my opinion. It's really good. I like it. I actually find I go for the biting blade more than this, but I think this is noteworthy enough to put in there. And 35 points for a weapon is not. It doesn't break the bank.
No, it's worth considering, isn't it?
Yeah.
Probably maybe on a secondary character, perhaps.
Yeah, normally for your big beater, you probably just want to take a great weapon because that'll take you up to strength 7 on a war boss, and you'll be AP3 rerolling monster wound. But if you do want to go more into that durability side of things, you can go with that. Yeah, speaking of durability, Dead Hard Armor. So this is from the journal. This is one of the new ones. It's specifically infantry, cavalry, or chariots only. So sorry, you don't get to put it on a wyvern, but you get +1 toughness, and it's also full plate. This is important because full plate is really hard to get hold of. If you've not got it on your data sheet, it's hard to get better than. Sure, you could take like the armor of not the meteoric iron, whatever it's called, the one that gives you just a flat 3-up save. That's fine, but you can't easily get to a 2-up save. So +1 toughness. This takes a chariot to toughness 6. That's basically why this is here.
You're up at dragon level at that point, aren't you?
You are a chariot. You are a dragon. That's correct. You probably hit a little bit harder. You're probably a little bit slower, but tankier as well, which is really good. And it's normally combined with the next one, which is
my favourite, the troll hide trousers. 40 points and extremely common, and that means basically anyone can take it multiple times. Is that correct?
So you can have it multiple times throughout the army. You could have it on multiple, on the same character multiple times if you wanted, which seems very inefficient. But
because 40 points are quite expensive. So, but it does give you +1 to your save. It can be worn with other armor, which is good. 5+ regen. But because they are trousers, it does make you flammable.
It's because they're troll trousers, and trolls are flammable, so it makes sense. It's really good. It's such a good item. If you've played against Orcs and Goblins, or if you've played Orcs and Goblins, you'll know that it's good, and you'll have probably written it.
You've seen it in every single list, don't you?
Yeah, it's really good. Yeah. Then we've got one of my favorites, Effigy of Mork. This is a talisman, and the unit is -1 to hit in combat. Now, malices to hit are pretty bad in 40k, and then you come to Old World and they're pretty incredible, because instead of hitting on 2s and 3s pretty much all the time, most infantry are going to be hitting on 4s, if not 5s, if you're like a souped up character going into them. So just stacking a -1 to hit, realistically most of the stuff in the game is going to be hitting you on 5s outside of another faction's souped up Dragon Lord, because their weapon skills are probably going to be better than yours as an orc. Yeah, really like it.
100%. It's something that I'm looking to put on my obviously not the Effigy of Mork, but that would be odd for a zombie dragon to be wearing. But there are ways of getting in the vampire counts list as well, and you just think, actually, I'm such a high weapon skill already. Get that -1 in, and actually you're just not touching me.
Make up for the lack of armor there. Speaking of Mork, we've got an arcane item that's Mork as well. What's the next one?
The Idol of Mork, 30 points, gives your wizard an extra 3 inches on their dispel range, and, which I think, obviously the 3 inches is nice, but I think the best thing is you re-roll a dispel per turn.
Yeah. Here's the thing. The reroll the dispel, incredible. Really good. Much better than rerolling a cast, in my opinion. After the FAQ, you can't reroll a miscast, which is fine. But you know what your opponent's rolled. Whereas if you're rolling with the Idol of Gork, which is the
Mhm.
casting version of this, you're rolling, you're like, I don't know if that's going to get past my opponent's dispel.
Yeah.
You've got to sort of call your shot and re-roll it before you know what they've got.
Yeah.
In this case, you roll, you go, I
That's
didn't
not enough.
dispel it. I'll roll again. Once per turn, but incredible. Really, really
100%.
strong.
You normally know what the key spells are in your opponent's army, aren't you? So
Yeah.
you know, and then you can make a judgment as well of how easy it is, even with the reroll, to get that dispel off. So
Absolutely.
and there's definitely play around with the dispel range as well, in terms of being out of your opponent's dispel range, but being in your own dispel range is nice.
That's what I was going to say. If you want to cast spells in the movement phase or the shooting phase that are 24-inch range, which they do exist, you can set up, cast your spells 25 inches away, not get dispelled, and then be in range to dispel their enhancements.
Yeah.
It's great. I actually think this is the best part of the item, but I also think it's the hardest part to use. The flat reroll is just, I roll some dice.
Yeah.
If you're good at positioning, I think you can get a lot of value out of this item.
No, 100%.
And then we did touch on it earlier, so we won't go too into depth on it. It's the Thinking Orcs at, and it's +1 initiative, and the unit is not subject to impetuosity. Like the way they worded this, there is a spell in the Law of Darkness, I think it is, which makes units within range of it test for impetuosity. So you just, I'm immune to that already.
Yeah, ignore.
Good stuff. Yeah, I really like this on a skirmishing unit of wolves that try to get around the board, because wolf cavalry do have impetuosity, which is hilarious because they should not be charging anything ever. And they just want to sort of play around the edges. So being able to turn that off with a character is very nice, because you can put it on a very cheap character as well and not feel like you're spending too much.
That you're wasting loads of points on it. Yeah. The initiative buff is nice, I suppose, as well, but I don't think it's going to come up that often, is it?
So those are the magic items. Now, Orcs have, I think, the best range of magic banners in the game, so we're going to talk about those as well. Here are some of the best. There are other ones that are more niche. These are the really good ones. Give us a start on the first one.
The Big Red Raggedy Flag, or Raggedy, I thought it was Raggedy Flag, but
might be.
Yeah, could well be. 50 points, so it is on the pricier end, but you do get +1 to your weapon skill and +1 combat res, which obviously the War Banner, only 25 points, so is half the price, but it doesn't give you the weapon skill buff that this gives you.
Weapon skill is so important in this army. If you're playing just your orcs in general, putting it on goblins, taking them to weapon skill 3 is so nice, because you're not being hit on 2s. Makes a big difference. In this army, you're going to put it on a big unit of boar boys. You're going to get them to weapon skill 4. That is such a big difference. If you're, risking going into other, reasonable units, anything out below a Warrior of Chaos is going to hit you on a 4.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff that you're going to hit on 3s, and that is a real big spike in damage output. So I think this is the number 1 in the list. I didn't arrange them in terms of strength, but this is the number 1.
No, and because you've got to, as you say, it's not, when you're looking at weapon skill as well, it's not just your ability to hit stuff, it's your ability to be hit as well, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So it's effectively putting a -1 to hit on against, obviously it depends where you're on the chart, but it puts a -1 to hit on a unit.
Yeah, weapon skill 3 to 4 is a very good breakpoint.
Good breakpoint, yeah.
Speaking of breakpoints, what do we got? We got the Banner of Butchery, and that's +1 strength on the turn this unit charges. Oh yeah, you can only have 1 unit of Biggin Boys on the Biggin Boar Boys.
Have another.
What if you just spent 35 points and had a magic banner that did basically the same thing? That's right, you do that. It's very good. I like it a lot. It's this is my second favorite banner, actually.
You're just going to max out on banners, basically.
It's very tempting to do that. The thing stopping me is that my BSB doesn't go in a unit, and I'm running out of good units to put banners on. All of the good units have a banner.
Yeah.
Speaking of, what about the third banner?
The Spider Banner. 35 points. It gives your unit poisoned attacks. And actually, if they already have poisoned, they automatically wound on a 5+ to hit.
I don't believe there's any way to get this banner on anything that's poisoned in the Nomadic Waaagh. In the normal general, army, you can take the Spider Riders, Forest Goblins, but they're not in this. Which is
I did
fine.
wonder if the wolves had poison, but clearly they don't. So
I quite like this on a unit of frenzied boar boys, because they're pumping out 4 attacks each.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Oh no, I've already used, my 2 ways of increasing the strength of this unit, so they're only strength 4. What if it didn't matter? Because every 1.5 models auto wounds, and then I still get to roll some extra wounds as well. It's great. I think it's really good. I think you want to take it on volume. So for me, putting it on a frenzied boar boy unit is very strong. Then we've got the Waaagh banner. I like this.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't put it in any of my lists because the other ones are so good, but I can definitely see a use for it, especially a Vanguard unit that turn 1 wants to get spicy. It's the Waaagh banner, 40 points, plus 3 inches to your declarable charge range, and it's plus D 3 inches to the charge distance. So,
on
boar
top of
boys.
Swift Stride?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. On top of Swift Stride, on top of the spell in the lore of the Waaagh, which I keep forgetting the name of. There is a spell that gives you plus 3 inches to the max range and plus D3 to the charge. You can get quite silly with it.
So if you've got, hear me out here. So you've got Vanguard Boar Boys unit, which moves forward before the game starts.
7 inches.
7 inches. So you're effectively 17 inches away at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So you start with a 16-inch declarable charge range through your 7-inch move, 6-inch charge, 3-inch swift stride.
17-inch declarable.
17 inches.
Yeah.
Then another 3 inches for this banner.
Yep.
You're 20 inches.
And then another 3 inches for Here We Go, which is the spell that I've just checked the name of because it was really annoying me.
So that's 23 inches declarable charge. Does the spell give you plus D3 to your distance as well?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so, and then you're obviously rolling shitloads of dice when you make that charge. But realistically, that gives you a turn 1 charge, does it not?
Oh, yeah. It's not guaranteed, but even without the banner, Here We Go gives you a near guaranteed, or like a very likely charge if they're deploying the line. So this is...
If you get first turn and someone has a war machine, not that you would ever do this, of course, Ed, you wouldn't put war machines on a hill right at the front of your deployment zone or anything. But
moving on quickly, this is a very good banner, and we've got one last to talk about, which is the Angry Lads banner. So this is really nice. This gives frenzy. Obviously, boar boys can take frenzy for a point, but if they do that, you can't also take the heavy armor, which means that they're capped at a 5-up save, which is it's not great. So what if you just take the heavy armor and you give a unit frenzy?
Yeah,
it's pretty good.
Done. Sold.
Yeah, it's not too shabby. All right, magic banners have been magicked. There is an army list before us. So this is one that I've been playing around with. It's 3 characters, 2 heavy hitting boar boy units, 3 heavy hitting chariots, and then chaff. So I'm going to go through basically, each unit very quickly and just sort of describe what they do. So there's a war boss, extra crew on there just because there were 5 points spare. That was the only reason. Dead hard armor, troll hide trousers, charm shield, biting blade. This is a war boss on a chariot that is T6 with a 2-up armor save, once per game 5-up ward save against anything. Charm shield is 5 points, so why wouldn't you? And then biting blade, so you're still strength 5, but you're AP 2 with armor bane 2 as well, I believe it is, or armor bane 1. So you're very choppy, even though you've gone for the more defensive route, and that's your general, which is why I've gone quite defensive on him.
And then obviously he unlocks the boar boys as well later in the list, doesn't he? So
that's why
he's really.
I prefer to have more of the Black Orcs, but I think it's important to use the core points more efficiently. Then there's the Black Orc Big Boss. Talked about him already. The only thing that I didn't mention is that he's got the troll hide trousers. Playing with him, not last weekend, the weekend before, I found that he just died to a dragon every time. So giving him a additional bit of armor, giving him additional regen save. Got the opportunity to go 2-up save if you go hand, weapon, and shield. Probably won't. Even just getting the regen's really nice, but getting the additional save against shooting is A-okay with me as well. Then there's a Goblin Odd Knob, level 4, Lore of the Waaagh, on a giant wolf. Can go in the Wolf Riders or can go separately. Got Lore Familiar, Power Scroll, and Thinking Hooks at. The reason you've got Power Scroll is his number 1 job is to cast Here We Go. And make sure you get those dirty charges off, either turn 1 or turn 2. You make it very difficult for your opponent to sort of stage you out. If you can say, I'm, casting on 3 dice, drop the lowest, you're probably getting the spell off despite their, best efforts.
Yeah, definitely.
Your secondary job is just be a dispeller. Once you've done that, that's his kind of job done. You've got the game-winning charges. Everything else is gravy after that point. There's a nice magic missile in there for killing, high toughness stuff like dragons. There is a spell to make you more punchy, giving you extra AP and reroll 1s to hit. All of this is great, but if you can get that once per game massive army-wide charge off, you're doing good. Unit-wise, 10 Boar Boys, 5x2. They're big uns. They're going to Vanguard move. They've got a 3-up save. They've got Cavalry Spears. Boss standard, big red raggedy flag, making them 4-up weapon skill, or weapon skill 4, sorry, and just quite self-reliant. They can go out, kill something. I like putting these on the flank and crushing something, because your opponent then has a big problem to deal with, because they are fast.
Yeah.
Go in, kill something, test a reform, hopefully pass, turn, make your opponent have to deal with you.
Flank charges galore, yeah.
Yeah. Well, they'll turn a unit that they don't want to turn to face to you, and then you'll crunch that, and then you'll, overrun or test a reform the next turn, and it'll all be great. You'll have a good time. Then for the rest of the core, 8 Goblin Wolf Riders with Feigned Flight, Bows, Reserve Move, and Light Armor. Got a boss in there for a little bit more leadership. They are prone to panic, so you don't necessarily want to put the character in there, but you can do. They're quite good for getting around if you want to try and get into range to cast some spells but then move back. Reserve move is very nice for that. You also have Chariot Runners if you want to play that way. Do be careful of, again, if they're caused to panic and then flee through your Black Orc Chariots. I believe they ignore panic. Anyway, just careful about panic.
Black Orcs ignore Goblin panic.
That's true. Yeah. So they're great chariot screens there.
Yeah.
And then there's 3 units of
you
one.
You weren't tempted to put ambushes on these guys then?
No. They're staying on the board. My opponent would know whether I was deploying or not, and I think they need to stay out on the board to have the effect.
Yeah.
Goblin Wolf Chariots. So a lot of people are running single model units of Dragon Ogres or Trolls, whatever sort of monstrous infantry you can run that's close order, that's going to walk up the board and make it so your opponent charges you, hits you, and has to sort of pivot. Or you can just go and sort of deal with something on the flank because you're reasonably punchy. Introducing Wolf Chariots. They are cheap, they are fast, they're maneuverable, they do have impetuosity, so you've got to be careful with how you position them. And they also have swift stride, so they can go. But what you want to be doing with these is trying to make your opponent end up in a weird position, or send them around the flank, send them war machine hunting. You don't have eagles; these are pretty good at doing that. Just a really solid, cheap unit. I need to test them more. I think impetuosity might actually be a real problem for the use that I have been trying to use them for.
Yeah,
but I think it's 150 points out of core. They are fast, they are cheap, they're annoying. At worst, if you deploy them on the flanks, you make your opponent have to commit to dealing with them, and that has value in itself.
Yeah.
Then in the special, second unit of Orc Boar Boys, these ones have Frenzy, also Vanguard move. They've got shields because you can, Cavalry Spears, Boss and a Standard, and the Banner of Butchery, so they're strength 5 on the charge. Very nice.
Only a unit of 7 of those guys, though. Just points, or because you
because they're frenzied. I don't expect to get 2 charges out of them. They go in, cause some issues. If they live, great. If not, whatever. My opponent had to overcommit to deal with them because there are, each model's got 4 attacks, which is dumb. Also, because of the frenzy, you want to get the maximum frontage into your opponent. So you could probably go 1 more. You start to get a bit unwieldy. And then finally, 3 units of 1 Black Orc Chariots. Great units. Yeah, they're just good. Most of the damage they're going to do realistically is the impact hits, but then you've got some great weapon attacks as well at weapon skill 4. They're just solid. Great if you can get 2 of them into a unit, that unit's probably going to crumble. They can't be challenged out because they're not characters. So
right, okay. I was about to say, surely this just gets challenged, but so you can't challenge the Black Orc Chariots on their own.
Nope, they are just models. They're not unit champions. Yeah.
Oh, right, okay. Fine, yeah, crack on. I was worried about you didn't have enough combat res for a moment there, but you have not put the standards on the units, have you? So, but you don't. I guess you don't need it if they can't challenge you and do the trick versus big stuff.
Absolutely,
just roll on.
Yeah, so that's the list. I've been finding it very effective. Any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I really like it. I think clearly, I mean, the number of units is quite limited to choose from in the Army of Infamy, so it does one thing, does it well. I share your concerns about the Wolf Chariots, and I would, in my opinion, I think there's value in the ambushers rule somewhere.
Yeah.
I think just even just to put some pressure on war machines and things like that, or perceived pressure on war machines, I think there's value in having access to that. So if I was looking at where I would make changes, I'd probably think about those Wolf Chariots and whether there's a Wolf Rider unit with ambushers there or 2 that's worth thinking about. just to make your opponent make some challenging decisions. But I think the character core is what I would choose. I think, as you say, that Black Orc Big Boss on Chariot, I mean, just he is unstoppable. The only things to take him down are dragons, and you can maneuver around that relatively straightforwardly, can't you? So, or given his points are less than a big dragon.
Yes, they
dragon
are.
can very easily find itself in a really poor position, about to be charged by frenzied boar boys or whatever, if they try and commit to kill the big boss. So, and he through the combat res, he can't get slowed down in the way that these big monsters tend to. So, I think that's just you've hit on an excellent combo there.
Yeah, what I found with him is that, especially if you manage to use the BSB into the flank of a dragon that's charged something tied up, which weirdly happens more than you'd expect, you probably make the dragon run away. It's likely going to fall back in good order, but the amount of static combat res that you can bring, even if they challenge you go, yeah, sure, I'll challenge, or I'll decline with my unit champion, whatever, I don't care. If that model doesn't die, you're doing maybe 1 or 2 wounds with the impact hits, maybe another wound with the weaponry, then you're bringing loads of static combat res, then they run. That's the experience.
Then they're off.
Yeah. So, good stuff. But lovely. Thank you so much for watching. This was episode 1. Obviously, this is a new channel. Cracking the Codex is a formula that John and I have been doing on the main channel for about 8 months now. We will be doing these, depending on how often we can book them in, but somewhere between 2 to 4, once every 2 to 4 weeks. Do let us know in the comments what you'd like to see next. I know Lewis is interested in seeing some undead, so maybe one of the Tomb Kings, perhaps. Mortuary Cult. I think that's very good, but we'll discuss that. Let us know what you want to see, and please do subscribe if you're enjoying it. Trying to get 3 videos a week out on the channel every week. More to come.